Well, let's talk about exit points, entry points, and visually collapsing states. Now, the features here are ready for you to play with. Fundamentals 1. If you haven't seen this already, it's listed off the main page here. Click on Fundamentals 1 link and it'll take you over to here. And there's interactive examples you can play with right away. We're going to talk a little bit more about the need and then come back to how these actually function. In very, very short order, basically this exit point here is just like a connection point to make this arrow go straight to there. Basically, this exit point is just another way of drawing this off arrow to come out of the group and into halted, and then the same one for here to go from off up to shut off. They're just diagramming tools, nothing too crazy. So if we look down at the entry points, it's kind of the converse or opposite of that, where you can have from outside the state go directly into a specific state without having to draw the arrow in there. And the reason for doing this is sometimes it's for managing complexity and keeping your diagram clean. Other times you actually want to collapse this state because it gets too big. And that's what we're going to go take a peek at here. So here's an example of that enemy AI where it has all these different behaviors. And if we draw it all without visually collapsing a state, it becomes rather large. But if we collapse states, it's relatively easy to look at. Now we have our idle kind of parent state. We've got a hunting parent state. We've got a hunt, grenade dive, enemy winning, and sounding the alarm. Those are our kind of like our top level states. And then we can descend into them. So if we compare this here, it's relatively easy to see the flow, or at least the main kind of behaviors of this state machine. But over in here, like I can't even read the text until I zoom in quite a bit. And when I zoom in quite a bit, then I can't see the whole design anymore. And so I have to be panning around. So both of these techniques will work, absolutely. One of the other problems with the technique of having everything expanded like this is if I want to add more states, like let's say I want to grow this one here. So if I were to grab this one and move it over like this, or if I wanted to add a bunch more here, then I have to increase the size of this thing. But when I increase the size of that, then I've got to grab these things and this and a whole bunch of these other things and kind of keep dragging it out. And then all of a sudden these are no longer in this, and it can kind of just end up being a bunch of busy work. Whereas instead, if I go back to, so we'll do the same example here, we'll go into the non-aggro state. So first we're going to go into idle, and I'll show a couple tips near the end of the video on how to do this efficiently. But for now, there's shortcuts, or you can use your mouse, go arrange, navigation, enter group, so Control Shift End. And then here's our non-aggro state, so I'll just use the keyboard shortcuts to pop into there. And now here's where we wanted to add more states. Now because this is collapsed, I just deleted those because I've been meaning to delete those anyways. This is still a work in progress tutorial for Game AI. I can grab these, copy as many as I want over here. I can grow inside this state in any direction, and it doesn't affect the outside. So if I pop back up a layer here, I don't have to move anything else around. So that's super duper helpful. But if we look here again quickly, so at this choice point here, there's a 50% chance I'm going to either pop out to sound the alarm, or I'm going to hunt. So I've created two exit points there, and if we pop out here, we can see from idle, here's our exit point for sounding the alarm, and here's our exit point for hunting. Now let's talk about it in a little bit more detail here. So we'll scroll back up to exit points because they're probably the easiest to understand here. It is pretty much like I explained. The write-up is here, it's pretty good. And if we click on this link here, we can see or we can get a simulation. I'm going to grab this. So because the simulator uses an auto layout, it kind of draws it in a different order. So that's why I brought this up over here on the side. So when we're in the shutoff, we're going to hit the on button to send the on event to get into here. And so when we're in on 1, we can exit to halted with the off here. And so when we see this transition here, it looks like this, and the diagram in the simulator has just drawn the arrow for us to see the full connection here. So this is the exact flow that this basically implies here. So we can do that. We can hit off and we see that it takes it all in a single event, single transition. So these are like pseudo states here, kind of like your initial states. And we can do it again one more time. We'll get to the on 2 state, and when we hit off, we are going to take this exit point to get to shut off. So there it goes, bang, bang. So that is, in essence, the exit point. Now we can go do the entry point here. Entry points are just like exit points. In the shutoff here, we can end our arrow, our transition, at the parent group, but we can tell it exactly which entry point we want to jump to, or to go into. And if we look at the simulator here, it basically draws it out in the effective sense here. So shutoff goes to the entry point, and then directly to on 1. Same thing here. This one just uses text. This one shows the arrow. So let's go ahead and do that. So we can see the on event takes us there. We're going to pop back off to off, or shut off, and then halted, and then take the other exit point. So off, off, hit on, and we see it functions very similarly. To work with collapsed states effectively, you either need to use the shortcuts, and the shortcuts are documented here if you're using the new template to create your shapes. You can see there's your shortcuts. You can also find them up from arrange and navigation. Nothing too crazy, but if you're going to be doing it a lot, it can be useful to load the StateSmith plugin for draw.io. And so there's a couple different ways to do that. You can use it with the offline draw.io application, and I'll show that in a minute here. But we're going to use the draw.io VS Code integration here. If you're new to StateSmith, I recommend not using the VS Code extension just because it is a little bit, there's more edge cases to be worried about, so I wouldn't do it initially. But we're going to show it here first because it is highly convenient. Gotta click on the terminal before I can hit enter. We're going to go to set up VS Code for StateSmith and CSX files. Now, we actually don't care about C# script debugging in IntelliSense, but we do care about draw.io extension loading the StateSmith plugin. So we'll select that, and we'll notice up here it's done a couple things. It's created a VS Code folder for us. It's set up the proper settings file here, and it's downloaded the StateSmith plugin, which is just some JavaScript here. Now, if we, before I move on here, I think there is an issue right now that I'll get around to fixing, where if you try to run that setup command multiple times, I think it just keeps adding it. So anyways, when you run that command, take a look. You might have to slightly adjust the path in here if you already have a settings thing. But it does still get you most of the way there, downloading the plugin and that kind of thing. So if you want to fix it, PRs are welcome. If not, just keep an eye on this file when you run that command. Okay, so we've done that. I'm going to close this and reopen it. And right away, these are some old shapes over here. They still work, they're perfectly valid. But I tend to want to use this page at the bottom for my shapes. But we notice these up here, which are very helpful. One, you can navigate to a shape by ID, helpful if you're troubleshooting errors. But now I can double click into idle, and I can one click to bounce out. So you can descend very quickly into it. If I want to go all the way home, one button. So if you are working on deeper nested designs, the plugin is really helpful. And I've actually made another video on how to load it into the draw.io offline application. So in the link or in the description of this video, I'll just point to that video there. Okay, So let's talk about the syntax here. On the main wiki page for the main repo, the main wiki, you can click on behaviors here, and this documents all the syntax that you can use with a couple examples. So if we look down, the entry and exit points are, I would consider kind of advanced behavior syntax, and you can actually combine them. So you can do all of your regular stuff, here's an example. You can have an order number, you can have multiple triggers, you can have guards, you can have action code, and then trailing that, you can have these via statements. So you can say via entry 1, and you can actually have via exits as well. So you can say, hey, I'm coming from an exit point and I'm going into an entry point. Now let's go just show an example of that. So we're bouncing around a little bit here. I apologize for that. We're going to do this in the game FSM example here, which is coming. We'll get there eventually. But while we're doing that, I'm also going to show off the new watch feature. So we're going to say we're going to run code generation here. We're going to do it recursively because I'm in the root and there's a whole bunch of subfolders for the enemies, and we're going to say watch. So it's going to basically watch these files. So if I save this file here, you'll see it detects the change, writes it. So that way, while we're doing the demo, it's really easy to test. And also, if I make a mistake, we'll catch it right away. So we're going to change this one here. So we've got hunting here. We're going to come from exit idle, and we are going to add an entry point into here. So let's say when we enter in, we're going to come into non-aggro. We could nest our entry points. So like make one in here and then put another one in there. And that would be fine, but I'm just going to make a kind of fake state here. Blah state. And we'll pretend that this does something, but I just want to keep this relatively short because, everyone's busy. Everyone's got other stuff they want to do. So we're going to scroll down here, get our entry shape here. And the colors don't matter. You can color them however you want. It's just the text of the label there. So we'll pop this in here. So we'll say paste into here, and we'll give this a name saying, whoop, I went to the wrong spot there. I'm going to hit undo and go back. I'm not sure what happened there. I think I tried to edit. So the zoom got kind of messed up there. Draw.io, the unofficial VS Code extension is kind of silly sometimes. One other tip is if you hit enter, it'll either do 100% zoom or it'll try to fit everything in together, like kind of fit the diagram. Anyway, so that's what I did. I hit enter to get back to where I was. Another reason why the official application is kind of better, but I'll stop moaning about how the unofficial VS Code extension doesn't get updates. It's been like a year, man. I wish there were some updates. Anyway, so we're going to give this a label here. So I'm going to hit F2 on there. And we're going to say blah. There's our entry point label. It can be a number, it can be text, whatever. We save it. Everything's happy. Now we're going to back out of state. And this, instead of going to idle, we want it to go to blah. So we're going to say via exit idle, via entry blah. And we'll save, and we should see it. Bang, it worked. So that's basically saying we're going to come out of idle here, out of the exit point there, and we're going to go into blah. We're going to go into here from there. Now, this is starting to be a little bit wordy here. And what I might do, if I was going to do a lot of this, is perhaps I would color it differently. So we could give some formatted text, and maybe you want to mark your exit points as red. So we could give that, a nice little deep red there. And we could give our entry points a green color. That would help it stand out a little bit. Another thing that you could do too is, oops, I didn't mean to move the label there, is put them on 2 lines. So we can save here again. And we can see that worked. Now, If you're ever unsure of whether this is, I guess, being part of the same transition here, you can check the simulator. Now, in this example, the simulator is pretty large and a little bit unwieldy, mainly because, the diagram is pretty large too, but we can see here's our exit point from idle, and it goes directly to entry point blah, which goes into the blah state, which then goes off like we showed there. So yeah, I hope I helped explain why it can be really useful, and kind of some of the shortcomings of trying to draw everything all without any visually collapsing. If you haven't already collapsed a state here, this is what it looks like. So there's that little icon there. So you can just click on that, and it collapses it. And then you can change the shape. It has different shapes depending on or sizes, depending on whether it's collapsed or expanded. But yeah, hope you find this useful.